Mirrors work in the way we expect, to reflect back to us a version of ourselves, and sometimes, depending on the mirror, with its cracked form or spatters of dust, the reflection of who we are can alter. The same can be said about soccer clubs, the way they form, the chants they sing, the kits they wear. They all have ways in which they mirror the other, and that detail on form and dust that change the face staring back at it, it's the cities, the demographics, the money, the history. Charlotte is an image of the league it's joining. It's arranging itself to mirror movements made before them, leaving the detail, the cracks and the dust, down to their hiring, their planning, and their strategic moves into an already established city of soccer. If you feel like Charlotte came out of nowhere, joining the league as a 30th team, jumping over others who are still waiting for that golden ticket, you would have the same feeling I did when the rumblings of it officially happening started late last year. Yes, of course Charlotte was an option. It was a city that was on the docket to join, but surely I am not the only one who was a little taken back by the speed in which it all took place. And surely I am not the only one who is seeing what they are doing, and quickly learning that 2021 might have a new true contender. And David Tepper, the owner, is pushing that narrative. Preseason for 2020 is underway, and with a year to go, Tepper has brought over Tom Glick, president of the Carolina Panthers and former executive at NYCFC and City Football Group, to head Charlotte's MLS endeavors. From there, they hired Mark Nichols as the new technical director, who is leaving the position of director of player development from Seattle Sounders. They also recruited Zoran Krneta as new sporting director, after being a well-known agent and co-founder of a global scouting network, Star Sports Entertainment. And just this past week, they announced Thomas Schuyling as Charlotte's Director of Scouting, leaving the position he had at PSV Eindhoven. On top of Tepper and Glick's arranging of pieces, they have also done something that mirrors some of the league before them. They are selling the hype. 20,000 season ticket deposits worth of hype, to be exact. And with the desire to be able to fill at least the lower bowl of Bank of America Stadium, which seats 36,000, they are well on their way to accomplishing what few teams have done in their first year in MLS. But let's talk about the important part of that statement. The people who will be filling the seats. The fans. In the beginning of this longer than usual intro, I mentioned Charlotte as an established soccer city. Why? Because of the many tournaments hosted there, like the International Champions Cup, as well as the national friendlies brought there in addition to the tours that run through it. For instance, the Mexican national team will be starting its U.S. tour in Charlotte on March 26. But outside of the flash and the names, Charlotte, or North Carolina rather in whole, has a steady footprint in American soccer. Both the men's and women's side have respected league teams, with the Charlotte Independence and North Carolina FC in USL Championship, and the NWSL's North Carolina Courage, who are reigning champions once again. There's a base for soccer in Charlotte. There's a collective of fans. One particular collective is Mint City Collective, a supporter group for the 30th MLS team, yet to be named, in Charlotte. And if you've been able to see any of the images coming out of Charlotte lately, you might have been able to spot them by their distinct and yet unique and terribly, in my opinion, refreshing mint color gear. It is this collective that is the heart of what Charlotte is about. The history, the long tradition of supporting soccer, and the uniqueness of each member in the collective. To get a better understanding of Mint City Collective, I spoke with one of their leaders, Jay Landsgroner. What follows is the interview I had with him, and let's be honest, it was a late night, the internet was not at its best, so the audio is a little bit wonky, but the message was clear. Hi Jay, how you doing?
Great, thank you for having me.
Of course. I thank you for taking your time. We're sort of having this call, I know, a little later in the day than normal, but I really appreciate you taking your time to speak with me. Just as a reminder to everybody, of course, you just heard the intro, but this is Jay Lansconer. He is part of the Mint City Collective. It's a supporter group for the newest addition to MLS, which is Charlotte. So Jay, let's start talking just a little bit about Mint City, because I feel like that's the forward-facing group right now for Charlotte. And you guys are sort of emerging straight out of the gate, all guns blaring, with a lot of what Atlanta fans have seen on our side, but MLS is in total of this huge collective in Charlotte.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. We came about a year ago. I had the first talks with a guy named Zach Luttrell, who runs a Carolina Panthers supporter group called the Roaring Riot. And he was like, man, there's a big possibility that Tampa wants to bring a team to Charlotte. We should do something and kind of help build that fan base. And so over the course of the next 5 or 6 months, we just kind of talked and brainstormed with a collective of people and came up with concepts and ideas of what we think that, a good name would be. And we actually sat down, some of Zach's really good friends and these guys that are just Charlotte natives, which I think a lot like Atlanta, you rarely see. But these guys, they actually run a branding company. So we sat down with them and they were like, hey, we're not going to redefine Charlotte as a city, but we thought at that moment that the Queen City name, if you do a Google search for Queen City, I think there's like 30 different names.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
So we were like, let's kind of shy away from that. And what can we think of? And strangely enough, I was actually talking to Zach one night and I was like, hey, how about the Transplants? Like, the punk rock band from Southern California. But we actually sat down with a few of the people that have been involved with soccer in the past and threw out a bunch of names, these guys with the branding ideas. And we ended up with Mint City Collective. And the name kind of branches from the history of Charlotte, where, Charlotte in 1799, believe it or not, was the first gold rush in the United States. And it was all to this area. And it became the first mint outside of Philadelphia to mint coins. And so, we still have a lot of that tradition here. We got streets and sections of town named after all that movement. So we decided to go with the Mint City naming, and we were like, well, what would be the collaboration of all the folks? And, there's a lot of people that live here that aren't from here. And then there's a handful of people that are from here. And we just wanted to bring everybody together, and we figured as a collective, that's exactly what we are. So tying in some of the history with the banking and everything, we went with Mint City Collective, and to kind of give people that live here an identity,
Yeah. That brings up a good question I have, because I myself am strangely an Atlanta native, which is, I know anytime somebody asks me that, they're kind of shocked, because it's like you never find somebody in Atlanta that's from Atlanta. They've been a bunch of different places and migrated there. Where are you originally from? Are you originally from Charlotte?
No, I was born and raised in Maryland. I grew up on the coast of North Carolina, and I've been living in Charlotte now for 12 years. And during that 12 years, I actually lived in DC for about a year and in Florida for about 6 months. So not a native to Charlotte, but I've over the years have become a self-proclaimed ambassador for the city.
When did Charlotte become your home then?
So I moved here to go to school at UNC Charlotte in 2006. So my math is off. I've been here for 14 years. But I actually didn't really start adapting or thinking of Charlotte as my home until closer to 2009, 2010. In 2010, strangely enough, was when I found a soccer bar in Charlotte that I eventually would start working at. But it's this place called Hooligans, and if you Google soccer Charlotte and bar, Hooligans will probably be the first thing that pops up. So I found that place, and the rest, as they say, is history. Actually, Tepper came up to Hooligans, and joined in with all the fans and was celebrating and poured a beer for a couple people and himself. And
is that the social media video that's been going around with Tepper cheersing beers behind a bar?
Yes, that's Hooligans. That was where it all started. 10 years ago, I actually was talking to one of the owners. I said, "Did you think 10 years ago that you would have a multi-billionaire walking through your bar that just got a Major League Soccer franchise?" And he's like, "Dude, I didn't even think we'd be open a year." So,
wow.
A lot has changed, but that bar was kind of the kind of stronghold of soccer in the city of Charlotte. So
with the bar, the Hooligans, then is that where you see or you interact with most of your friends who are also into soccer? Is there just like multitude of bars around Charlotte that host these gatherings for soccer in the city?
Well, at this moment, it's actually kind of a loaded question because I think centrally, Hooligans is a place where everybody gathers to watch soccer. I think that it's a place that everybody knows if you want to watch a big game, that's the place to go to. If the U.S. national team is playing on TV and it's a decent opponent, the bar is going to be packed shoulder to shoulder. There's a courtyard outside. There's probably another 200 or 300 people out there. But with Mid City Collective, we're actually launching chapters throughout the city because we realized early on that it's it's maybe a little daunting for some people in certain areas, certain parts of town to get out, drive to the center city and find parking and all of that stuff. So we wanted people to feel comfortable, and so we launched chapters very similar to what the American Outlaws do, where just a minimum amount of members become an official bar and set up and stuff to those bars. But I live in a town outside of Charlotte called Belmont, and we've got a chapter here. We've got chapters in neighborhoods in Charlotte. We've got a few forming in Asheville and Boone, and some in South Carolina. We actually got reached out by Myrtle Beach. So Hooligans, I think, is a centralized location, but Mid City is kind of reaching out into different neighborhoods and creating our own soccer bar culture.
Well, I know that there's been a lot of focus and attention on when we're talking about the spreading of obviously it's chapters for Mint City is, this attendance of people wanting to put deposits on season tickets, right? So there's been this draw with the numbers. I mean, obviously you guys pulled in 7,000 season ticket deposits within the first 24 hours, which is absolutely incredible. I think you guys are now over 20,000 season ticket deposits. But when we're talking about the collective, have you seen a big growth on membership for Mint City?
Yeah, we've actually hit some snags with that too, because when the team launched, we had 300 members. And then within 2 days, we had jumped to almost 1,000. I think now we're over 1,000 members. So since the announcement, it's just been exponential growth. And I say we hit a snag because we expected a growth, but we didn't expect it to be threefold from what we already had. So it's been a crazy growth, and the season ticket thing. The way that it was structured is that 7,000 number was probably closer to 15 to 20,000 right then, because you put down your deposit and you could be putting a down deposit for 2 to 5 people if you wanted to, but there was just one deposit. So it's an incredible number, and I think I've seen numbers like 80% of the deposits that are put down are retained. So I mean, even if you get that, you get, what is that number? 16,000 people. That's half the lower bowl at Bank of America Stadium. So you're already a third of the way from filling the stadium. So yeah, it's a pretty great accomplishment right out the gate, especially when you look at Nashville, for instance. I think I saw a number where they've only sold 7,000 season tickets as of like a couple weeks ago. So, it's fun to watch. I knew that there was a kind of underground support for the team there, and it's good to see all those numbers start to come out and what is being accomplished by this team.
Well, Charlotte is such a big soccer town in general, even when it comes to like academies and lower level clubs there. I mean, Have you seen any other supporter groups popping up outside of Mint City?
Well, I'm going to bore you with a little bit of my story. There was in 2015, the Charlotte Independents came to Charlotte, and I actually was one of the original founders of Jackson Militia, the supporter group for that team. And I still have a pretty good. I like to think I have a good relationship with the owner, Jim. I actually saw him at the announcement, but he. Those guys, Jackson Militia, have done a lot of work in the past to help build awareness of soccer in the city of Charlotte. And there was other groups with that team specifically, and I don't see. I wouldn't anticipate a lot of them to jump ship to the MLS team. I do think that some of them will come out and watch the team and enjoy it, but I do think there's a lot of very passionate USL fans out there as well. Now, with this MLS team, there's been a handful. I've seen what I'll call some trolling accounts on the internet too, Twitter and Facebook, kind of popping up to poke fun at maybe stuff that Mint City's doing or Charlotte in general. So that's fun to watch, and it's pretty entertaining. But I don't think we'll truly know until we start getting more team news. I think the manager, players, all that stuff. And aside from Mint City, we've also got there's a Mexico group called Pancho Villa's Army. They operate similar to the American Outlaws. And they have a huge base in Salisbury, North Carolina, and we've been in contact with them to help build kind of a Latin base for support, because we know that's going to be huge in this area. Hope to see that too.
So, I mean, in that regard, you guys coming into this full year of preparation before you join in 2021, I mean, you've had already 2 signings for your team outside of the announcement that Tom Glick is going to be the president, who is also the president of the Carolina Panthers. You've had 2 signings already at the beginning of this year. You had Zoran Carrera, which is your sporting director, and Mark Nichols. How do you feel about the Mark Nichols hire? I mean, that's somebody that's coming from a lot of background and history with soccer, more particularly with the Seattle Sounders, where he oversaw 15 academy players that transitioned from MLS to USL as well. He was a 2-time soccer academy coach, helped found the youth club in North Carolina, the North Carolina Fusion, and was the head coach of the USL PDL Carolina Dynamo. I mean, he's got a rich history in Carolina. So do you feel like that was a good hire for your technical director?
I think so. I look at the task that he has that they've stated that he has, and kind of helping with youth development and piecing together the brains of the operation. He, with being in the PDL and helping make the youth academy stuff here, he has the knowledge of what the lower tiers of the sport have in the North and South Carolina, and even up into Virginia a little bit. And I think his work in Seattle, I mean, you can't sleep on that. Seattle's developed some of I hate to say this, to be honest, but they developed some of the better academy players in Major League Soccer. As a former DC United fan, I took a lot of pride in what they did with guys like Bill Hamid, but there wasn't much outside of that. But Seattle, and how much Nichols has been involved with that directly, I'm not exactly sure. But 15 players that go from the academy to either USL or MLS is still quite an accomplishment. That's like the Akron team from the early 2010, where they put a bunch of players in Major League Soccer. So it's one of those things where I'm looking forward to seeing how he develops the relationship within the region, within other soccer clubs. I know the Independents, for instance, they just signed a deal that has 13,000 academy players in the Charlotte region. That's a large number to pull from, but I think you've got Nichols who can potentially pull quite a bit from that, and probably from Raleigh and Greensboro and South Carolina areas too. So I think he's a smart hire. I think it's a very calculated move. Tepper seems like a guy that's really thought about what his vision is, and I think Glick gets that vision, and that's why the hire was made.
Yeah.
So I'm just hopeful that he's very thoughtful about everything, and I like to think that maybe he will be.
Now, with some other MLS teams in the past, I mean, obviously Nashville had a little bit longer of a run up, and then we're going to see what Austin will be doing because they're joining the same year as you. They're going to be in the same class. Do you feel like you guys are sort of ahead of the curve right now with the hirings, and then also just as far as planning goes into this year before 2021?
Ahead of it, no. I think we're right where we need to be completely honest. Consider that the announcement was made just about 1 month ago. And these guys have the sporting director and the technical director kind of figured out. It's you look at teams like Inter Miami, they just hired a coach. And preseason starts when? Well, Atlanta just started their preseason.
Well, it starts next week.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of logistics to be figured out and all that stuff for the preseason, and they just hired their coach. So I think each team's going to be different in the way that they approach things. And I don't think Blake or Tepper are going to be, they're not going to jump the gun just because somebody has a big name. They want, like I said before, it's going to be a very calculated system that they go about making the hires and bringing personnel in. From a time frame standpoint, we're actually Mint City Collective has we call it the Chronicle, and we just had an article written up about it, about the timetable and when we would expect players and coaches to be made and signed on. It's an interesting read, and so and the guy that did it, he calculated kind of all of the expansion teams that are out there right now and how long that they've made to do all of their processes. So the first signing he has is actually in February for the kit. Oh, that's next year. But April for the branding stuff. So it gives us a little bit of time to start getting more and more excited.
What do you guys have at Mint City geared up for preparation leading into 2021? Or do you guys see that you have a lot on your timeline and a lot on your plate before opening day next year?
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, we've got an entire culture to build, and that type of stuff's not going to happen overnight. So one of the things that we're doing, we're kicking off this year. All of our chapters have been kind of organizing it on a micro level, but we've got an event with an organization called Soccer 658. They are the organization that runs with Homeless World Cup. These guys, they basically bring people in, teach them better values through soccer, and try and place them in the world to live a better life. They do that with the homeless, and I think a lot of people that live in this area that maybe not quite as connected. But we're doing a Volta night where we go, we're going to hang out there. We're having FIFA tournaments and set up the goals for the street soccer stuff and just kick the ball around and have a great time. With all that, we're doing a drive for cold jackets and coats, just to kind of help out the community as well. So we're going to be engaged with the community in that way. We've got a busy year ahead of us to kind of bring us all together. I don't know if it was officially announced today, but Mexico is coming to Charlotte. So that'll be another chance for us to bring us together for soccer at Bank of America Stadium. So it'll just be a big year of basically getting together, hanging out, and doing some fun things. But to have these events and to bring everybody together over different sports and different atmospheres over the next year, but be engaged with the Major League Soccer team and bringing that sense of identity. One of the things we often say is, you look at the Hornets from the 80s and 90s, everybody knew of Charlotte by the Hornets. They were the identity of Charlotte. And I think Charlotte's kind of lost a sports identity. And then we see this team, this soccer team, as a chance to do that again. So we're really looking forward to that. And I know it's going to be a challenge, but to kind of bring Charlotte together as one.
That's a very interesting thing that you just said there about identity for sports in Charlotte. I would think that the Panthers being as big as they are, that would sort of be the sitting identity right now for Charlotte. Are you finding that identity is fading away?
No, I don't. Actually, I think with David Tepper coming in, it kind of builds it up even more. It brings a whole new dynamic to the city. But I think the soccer team brings in it's a whole different world. I think you're going to see a lot of people to come out to these soccer games that aren't going to go to Panther games because they're not really American football, but they're fans of soccer. I think there's a huge lot of American community here that may not be fans of the Panthers, but they are huge fans of the game of soccer. And so I think that, there's this huge population that's just dying to get out and support this area. And this is the greatest opportunity for them to do so. I'm not going to say that the Panthers are losing identity. I think that the Roaring Lion are doing a really good job of maybe change. They have the thing they call it change the culture. And I think that that's exactly what they're doing. And then I just think it's a different identity, the collective nature of it. And I say that, we go back to the transplants conversation where, not everybody that lives here is from here. So a lot of people have their associations with their football teams or their hockey teams or baseball teams. So they don't necessarily have a soccer team. We look at that and just think that, it's a great opportunity to kind of come together over this sort of stuff.
Yeah, okay. So this actually hits on semi what I wanted to talk about you next, because we haven't really we've gone a little bit into your history and why you do the things you do and like some of the organizations you have been a part of prior, but you've loved soccer for quite a while and you've dealt with soccer for quite a while. When did your love of the game start?
It's a weird story.
I know it's hard.
Well, it's funny because I grew up and I played, like most American kids, I played soccer when I was a kid. And I loved having the ball at my feet. I actually played defense, so I love chasing people with the ball. And because I'm a little bit shorter, I had to learn how to slide tackle really well. I grew up in Maryland, like I said. And so watching DC United games on TV every once in a while, and back when they used to put commercials in the middle of gameplay, and before there were soccer channels and all that stuff. So, I vaguely, very briefly watched the World Cup. My family wasn't really into the game, but I always was. My dad called it communist kickball, actually.
Wow.
And so, yeah, my dad's a strange guy, but it was one of those things where a funny story. I was playing soccer in high school, and a guy said, "What's your Premier League team?" And I said, "What do you mean?" I was like, "I'm a DC United fan." And he's like, "No, man, you gotta watch the Premier League." And I was like, "Dude, why? Why would I watch something in England when I have MLS, the greatest league in the world, right here?" And this guy's like, "MLS is not the greatest league in the world." And so, I legit thought as a senior in or a freshman in high school that MLS was the best league in the world. And he was right. It's not. But there's a lot of love in the game. Throughout the years, I got more and more embedded with it. Like I mentioned, I was president of the Charlotte chapter of the American Outlaws for a couple of years. I helped founded Jack's Militia for the Independents. I was a field team member for Screaming Eagles in DC United. So I've been around the game, and most of those happened within the last 10 years. So, I've been around it and been embedded within that culture. And when I lived in Florida, they were called FC Tampa Bay. It was before the Rowdies got their name back. I was sitting with Ralph's Mob down there. And so it's just, I love the passion of the sport and just the artistic nature of the supporters in the sport. I always tell people you go to soccer for two things: the game on the field and the atmosphere in the stand. And that's kind of what I live for at this point. Of course, my family too, but
yeah. And that's regards to now Charlotte being your home base. You said you lived there for 14 years. It's now going to be this team and this life and this family that's going to be at home in your city. Is there any hopes or goals that you have for the club going into its first year, with the players, with the philosophy, with the way that they play, with the way that they're ran? Do you have any hopes for them?
Yeah. Philosophy that can be altered throughout a season. It's a long season. I like attacking soccer. I also like 0-0 games too. There's an art to the game. So I want to be entertained. My overall goal, to be honest, as David Tepper said, is to win the cup. I want to basically one up Atlanta as much as we can. And then, of course, beat Atlanta. I think David Tepper added Stokes to that fire immediately. Beating Atlanta, I think, is going to be one of the bigger things. Believe it or not, doing well in the Open Cup. I put a lot of value personally in the Open Cup. I love that tournament. It's an incredible thing. And I had the fortune of being with DC United fans when they won their last Open Cup. I think that was in 2014. And so it was a great time, and I love that tournament. So doing well in the Open Cup, I think, would be another thing. As for players and stuff, to be honest, I would love to see This is going to sound weird, but I want Clint Irwin to come play keeper for us. I watched Clint play as a backup goalkeeper for the Charlotte Eagles when they were in the USL. Right before he went to Colorado and made a name for himself. So I look forward to, if we sign any Charlotte players, seeing the academy players come up and, I don't know what kind of philosophy they're going to have, but I'd like to see what they have and tactics and all that stuff. So we can sit here on weekends and discuss why is this person not playing as opposed to this person? I look forward to those conversations as well.
All right, so let's just get into it because you just stoked the fire. Obviously, Tepper has the very famous, I now think very infamous for people in Atlanta, the "screw that city" comment. How big of a rivalry do you think Atlanta United and Charlotte is going to be? And then also, since you said that the Open Cup is something that you hold as being a highly valuable trophy, does that also then piss you off that we just won it this past year?
Well, it pissed me off that you guys won any trophy. I think that, I do think that Charlotte and Atlanta will be a good rivalry. I think it's like one of our guys, Johnny Wakefield, said recently in a different interview. He said, nobody really hates Orlando. We have disdain for that team and their fans, but nobody really hates them. It's the town of Mickey Mouse. And I think Atlanta and Charlotte we've got NBA, we've got football. I mean, we may not be the biggest rival in each one of those in Atlanta's eyes, but Charlotte kind of looks at Atlanta and we're striving to be better than Atlanta in every way that we possibly can. And I think that long term, I think that the league would prefer that Atlanta and Charlotte have that rivalry. I do think that Nashville will probably become a rival, and obviously Austin with coming in the same year will have some sort of rivalry. But I think geographically it makes sense that Atlanta would be one of the bigger rivals, and I hope that Atlanta fans embrace us in that way as well.
I can assure you Atlanta fans will embrace that. I mean, I've talked to many friends of mine who actually also live close to Charlotte who will be participating in all of the, Charlotte home games, except for when Atlanta comes to town. And then you got to pick which side you sit on. But at the same point in time, I think you made a very good point. It's the rivalry, I think, between Charlotte and Atlanta is going to be very interesting. Yes, because of geographically, it's not a terrible drive to go up to you guys, and it's not a terrible drive to come down to us. But I think there is this thing that I have been seeing pop up in a lot of conversations that, the heads of Mint City have been having. And, what Tepper has said and what Glick has said is this idea of like a Southern team. So Atlanta very much in their way embraces that sort of Southern hospitality. You guys as well, that's something that you really hold on to as your core, as this Southern team that is hospitable, but, when game time starts, it's on.
Absolutely. I have some really, really good friends that are actually Falcons fans. And when the Panthers play the Falcons, we talk a lot of crap throughout the entire game, but we still, at the end of the day, will go buy you guys some drinks later on, right? Even though y'all have had our number the last couple of years. And it's I think that's kind of the Southern mentality. It's this idea of like, you may not be, from here, but, I'm going to show you a good time unless it's time to not show you a good time, and that would be during the game. We're gonna support our team. We're gonna support our city. But at the end of the game, before the game, I invite anybody to our tailgates. I invite them all to the bar afterward. It's truly. I think we will be fighting for who's the most angry, hospitable supporter group there is. I don't
know. So I do want to ask this question because it's going to come up obviously in the springtime. The team's name is going to be announced. Obviously, you guys are a lot closer to the ground there. You've heard a lot more rumbles as far as possible names, maybe the direction the team is going. Do you have any idea what the team name might be for Charlotte?
Quick answer, no. But the fun answer, I like to think that they're going to call it Charlottetown. I think there's three that really play into the fans here. I think Charlotte FC, Charlottetown are the two, I would say, leading team names. I will say that during the announcement, when Mint City was getting a photo op with Garber and Tepper and Mint City, Tepper actually asked me, he said, what do you want me to call the team? Mint FC? And I was like, dude, call it Charlottetown. And Garber actually agreed. He said he really liked that name. I love him or hate him. At the end of the day, David Tepper's paying a lot of money to bring a team here, and he's the one that truly has the say. So I think he'll make a really good decision on that name, and whether or not they choose the one that we like, we'll always support them. So I don't know. I'm pulling for Charlottetown personally. I think I've actually written a few songs and chants to that tune, so we'll see if I have to change.
So in this conversation, also going along with this idea of and the naming of the team, obviously when they brought out all of the Charlotte to MLS graphics and the team graphics that are run right now on all of the social medias, it's in this really black and white scheme, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But let's talk really quickly about colors for Mint City, because it's this really nice blue. I don't think it's the Carolina blue, which you could obviously correct me if I'm wrong on this. It looks close to it, but it doesn't have the same saturation as a Carolina blue, but it has this wonderful mint green color, which I think the combination between, that beautiful blue that you have here, as well as that mint green, is somewhat attractive and refreshing. And do you think the team would at all go in that direction?
Selfishly, yeah, I think they will. But realistically, when I talked earlier about how we came up with the name, the branding guys, they came up with the color schemes too. They showed us, obviously, with the mint name, we wanted to use a mint color. They did this whole color analysis and compared it and added it to the Panthers blue. That blue that we use is actually the Carolina Panthers blue. Because, and you can speak wholly on this, we actually went and I'm giving away a lot now, but we went to the home opener for last year and watched them drop the banner. And one of the reasons we went was the branding guys, one of their brothers actually played for Cincinnati, Forrest Lasso, if you remember him.
I do, yes.
He's from Charlotte. We were walking around and we noticed that, the biggest difference between the Falcons and Atlanta United was gold. That was the only difference between the branding of the two teams. So we went into it trying to figure out, how the team might brand it. And so we went with that Carolina Panthers blue and stuck it out and put it with the mint color. And it, I think it looks really good. The branding guys did a great job with all the designs, the eagle, all the other stuff that they put together for us. But I think the color combination, one of my biggest fears initially was, people were going to confuse this with Seattle. And then they did a color analysis of Seattle too and showed us how different they actually are. And now that I see it in person, it's significantly different. So I would hope that the team goes with the blue and maybe like a mint highlight, like the trim or the three stripes if they continue going with that crap. And maybe those are mint colored. But if they don't, then that's fine. I think the team will go with the Panthers blue, probably solid color, and most likely black will be the other color. So Atlanta and Charlotte will have a very Inter versus AC style feel to it, I guess.
It's just a very, very refreshing color palette. It's very interesting. I'm going to attach the link to the Mint City Collective when this episode drops, just so that people can look it up and see, why you guys chose that name in particular and why you chose the color palette that you did, because you have this wonderful intro page that sort of explains what Mint City is. But it's just a refreshing color palette, and I think it holds true to this idea of what Charlotte is, this mint with the U.S. Mint, and then drawing that into a color. And then obviously that Carolina blue that stays strong is also a huge representation of Carolina itself. But as a Carolina supporter, what makes you the proudest? Like, what about Charlotte makes you extremely proud to be a supporter of the city itself, and then obviously the MLS team that's coming in next year?
The supporter of the city, I would say, the people that live here. There's incredible people. And there's incredible people everywhere. But I think that the way that Charlotte has come together as a city, with how many transplants are here, but it still has this very, Southern hospitality feel. And as for the team, it's going to be hard to say. Like I said, the culture for that's all going to build as it goes on. So yeah, I don't know exactly what to think of that yet. I'm just excited that we've got a team here, and as Mint City Collective, we can continue to support it.
So as far as news that's coming up for Mint City, you guys have that event that's with Soccer 658 coming up. Do you want to say a little bit more about that? So if anybody's listening to this that's near the Charlotte area can come and partake in that, and then any other things that you guys have coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, we've got an event coming up. I think it's the 23rd of this month of January, and it is it's in this facility on Charlotte's east side. It's called Soccer 658. They're an organization that really does a lot to help people out that are in need. I mean, one of our things is we're doing a coat drive for that. But we're also hosting soccer games and FIFA tournaments while we're in there as a way to bring everybody together, within Mint City, but also to show everybody that there how we can help our own community in one way. This is just one way of many that we look forward to being immersed within our community and helping others out. So if you want to come by, check out Project 658. It's in East Charlotte. It is a wonderful facility. They've got soccer banquets or a banquet hall. And so it's a well-renowned place that it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. If you need to reach out to us, find us on social media, Mint City COLL, Mint City Collective, and just you can email us, go to the website, check out all of our links. We have some scarves. We actually have a Screw That City shirt that we're selling. So if you want to get your Atlanta hate on, go on. I have a feeling that those are going to sell during Panther season next year too. So that'll be nice.
Yeah. Now, if people wanted to find you, Jay, and reach out to you, where can they reach you on social media?
My social is Rock the Post on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. It's just Jay Ranchko.
Awesome. And so if anybody wants to join Mint City, they can go to the website. They can find them online, like you said, at Mint City COLL. Thank you again, Jay, so much for coming and calling and talking. And I spent a lot of your time tonight just discussing things, but I think a lot of it has opened up some new doors for fans all around MLS to know a little bit more about Charlotte and get a little bit more excited about you guys coming into the league in 2021.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for having me, and I look forward to meeting all these MLS fans throughout the country and hosting them here in Charlotte.
Well, we look forward to meeting you, really, honestly, and as another Southern hospitality person to another. If you buy me a beer, I will buy you a beer. So when I'm up there, you can get me one, and then when you're down here, I'll get you one. It's easy, for me at least, to see what's going on at Charlotte and draw connections to Atlanta, to LA, Seattle, and other larger clubs in MLS. Easy to see the mirrored relations from club to club. We are all similar. We all have things in common, but it's the makeup of the fans, the people, that shape the reflection staring back at it. No matter how new, how old, how broken, or how odd, we are all mirrors that make up a collective. We are all Major League Soccer. No matter the dust, no matter the cracks, we're still all mirrors looking back at each other. Did you like the interview? Do you have comments or do you have questions? Please reach out to me and let me know. You can email me at kfinterviews@gmail.com or find me on social media at @thekellyfrancis. I would love to hear from you. Next week, I'm going to be switching things up a bit, and I'm going to be trying something a little different. Can't tell you what it is yet, but stay tuned to hear all about it.